Welcome to the Elementary STEM Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Naomi Meredith, a former classroom teacher turned K-5 STEM teacher and coach. With over a decade of experience teaching and a master's degree in STEM leadership, I'm here to coach you throughout the year to help you gain back more time to create innovative experiences for your students. Some weeks you are looking for different STEM projects that are super in depth and use the engineering design process. But other times you might be looking for some activities that are really easy to implement and also use materials that you have on hand. In this episode, I'm going to give you some quick and practical ideas of how to use math manipulatives in your STEM instruction. This episode is based off of my recent K-5 STEM long-term planning sub-position. Say that 5 times fast. And I was looking for ways that I could easily implement some STEM stations in the classroom I was teaching in, and also try to use the materials that the teacher already had in her classroom. And there were some things that I actually had to bring in myself, which is totally fine. But the things that I'm going to be mentioning, you probably already have, or you could even borrow from a classroom teacher if you need to do that. I have done that a ton over the years where there was a specific material I really wanted to use for a project. I probably wasn't going to do it all year. And then I would ask the classroom teacher, borrow it, and then give it back. So that's a really helpful tip as well if you are limited on a budget, which is most STEM classrooms, as I am finding out. Borrowing is a really, really great strategy. So don't feel like you have to buy everything. So these are really based on some quick 1-day or 2-day challenges or STEM stations that you could add into your instruction. And the kids really, really loved doing these activities and these ways of how I use math manipulatives in their classroom. And it was cool because the kids would even mention, oh, I have these in my class, or we use these for this. But seeing them in a different way was also really fun for them too. The first idea is pretty self-explanatory, but it is using math manipulatives for building. It also gets you to think about math manipulatives in a different way, not only as the teacher, but also as the student. Sometimes I will use just one math manipulative, or I will use multiple in the same station, and that's pretty cool too. The first one that comes to mind is we were doing a unit recently about how animals prepare for the wintertime. And one of my STEM stations was about hibernation. And so at this station, I had available for students cotton balls, those little cute counting bears, pattern blocks, dry erase markers, and then these counting sheets that I am actually testing out and I will have available soon that I think you'll really love. But we were talking about hibernation, and the goal for this station is that students were to build a bear den for the little bears. And the cotton balls were supposed to represent insulation to keep their little bear den warm. And students were using those pattern blocks to create the bear dens for their bears, whether it was one or a whole family of bears. And then on their counting sheet, they would count and write how many of each type of pattern block shape they used in their design. This one was really engaging. I was so shocked at how much the kids love this STEM station. And it was so cute too. They did play with the bears and give them little personalities, which is really good for kids. It was so good to see that. So this was a fan favorite in K-2. Along with that, I had posted this on my Instagram at Naomi Meredith _ not too long ago. And also I talked about it in my last episode, the Easy Valentine's activities that you can do in your classroom. But I found in this teacher's classroom some Cuisinart rods. Don't know if that's how you say it, but I found these Cuisinart rods and they're used for measuring. They have different measurements in centimeters. So if you stack them all up from shortest to longest, it creates like a stair step kind of pattern. And what students were doing at this station is that they were creating hearts using these blocks. And again, they had a different counting and writing sheet. They had to count and write how many of each block they used in their design. For older kids, you can even have them actually add up the measurements that were in their heart or whatever you're having them create. But again, they were building at this station, but then adding in a lot of that math component in a different way using these manipulatives was really, really cool. And another way I like to have students build and use math manipulatives and really, really quick on planning is adding in my engineer inspiration boards. These are super, super easy. You can display them up on the screen. They're always my go to when I need another STEM station. And they're thematic throughout the year or holiday specific. And there are 9 different images that relate to that holiday or that theme. And then students will build those items however they choose. You can have them plan and do all that kind of stuff, but you can even go straight to the building. And again, really, really easy. And it's so cool to see how they come up with certain designs. So I have a whole variety of engineer inspiration boards in my TBT shop, Naomi Meredith. Super easy STEM station, and you are good to go for the whole year. Another way that you can use math manipulatives in your STEM instruction is use them as a measuring tool. We often have kids measure with rulers or yardsticks or measuring tapes, and there is definitely nothing wrong with that. But sometimes your littlest learners might not be ready for that, or you just want them to measure in a different unit in a different way. And math manipulatives can be a great way for that. This isn't a math manipulative I'm going to share, but I did just teach a STEM field trip at a skating rink today. So I'm back at that for these STEM field trips. And one of the activities they have to do is to push a skate and see how far the skate has traveled and do multiple trials of this on the skating rink floor and then also on the carpet. And then they have to conclude how friction plays into how the skate moves. What's interesting about this field trip that I do is that I'm not in charge of the lessons, not in charge of the materials. I show up, everything's set up for me somewhat. And I notice they don't leave me any measuring tapes or yardsticks or rulers. And so I actually show the kids the unit of measurement is to measure their footsteps. And so we count how many footsteps to them. So if they're the one measuring, they have to be the person measuring every time because it's their footstep. But that's just, again, really good for students to know there are different units of measurement, whether it is the traditional methods or maybe it's just another type of tool. And so that's how those math manipulatives can come in. So one STEM station I also recently done with kids, we were talking about snow and winter, is we were talking about snowmen. And so at this station, students were using Play-Doh to build their own little snowman. And then they had to measure how many cubes, how many Unifix cubes tall that snowman was. This was a really good challenge because I challenged them, okay, try to make a snowman that's 3 cubes tall. And maybe try 5, maybe try 1. And so it really got them to think, oh, here's how I can really focus my design. So using those cubes in a different way. Also, a side note, if you have some crafting trays or lunch trays that are extra from the cafeteria, or there's some really great ones from IKEA, if you're using Play-Doh, recommend building on those trays because it helps center the crumbs. And I would tell the kids, we play on the tray. And the last way that you can use math manipulatives in your classroom is think about, are there digital ways that this can be done? I used to have some actual digital math manipulatives, these boards that I shared digitally that I created during COVID. And those were huge hits, but there are way better things that have come out. And I retired those from my shop because there is better technology out there. My favorite go-to website, and they do have apps as well, and it's free at the time of this recording, is the Math Manipulatives created by the Math Learning Center. And I used it actually without downloading the actual app because I didn't have access being a sub. And so I actually showed kids how to scan a QR code using the iPad. And then they were able to access the digital math manipulative that I wanted them to use. And you could also share this link with kids on Chromebooks if you have another way you want them to access. I would often do that a lot in Seesaw when I had my K through 5 STEM classroom, doing choice boards. So again, it was just different how the kids had to log in. So how to get creative with the technology. And so using those digital math manipulatives can be really helpful, whether it is building or a different type of activity you want them to do. And so for this activity, I had kids create snowflakes using the digital geo board. And there was a couple of reasons for this. One, I needed another technology station in my rotation. I wanted something that was really focused. I wanted to teach kids how to scan a QR code, but also how to use a digital tool in a different way. I also do have physical geoboards that I use that are my own personal geoboards that are going in my STEM trailer, and I've used them for various things. But I, to be honest, did not feel like managing rubber bands for what? 12 different classes, 300 kids. I wasn't feeling it. I knew what comes when you use rubber bands with kids. I know the tactile engagement and the hands-on is super important. I am a big proponent of that. But I also think too, kids need to learn how to use technology in effective ways and also for making learning meaningful. And so using these digital geoboards were really cool for kids. They had unlimited colors. There was no fight on who had what rubber bands. There weren't rubber bands all over the floor. None of them were breaking. There were different geoboard designs they could try, and they stay focused, and they really liked it. Again, you don't have to do this to replace everything, but this is a really great option to mix into your STEM instruction. Are there other ways that you use math manipulatives in your STEM instruction? I would love to hear. Feel free to send me a DM over on Instagram at Naomi Meredith _. Leave a comment on any video that I post. Even if you're listening on YouTube, you can comment in the comments on this. I would love to hear. It's a really great way. Another way to think about how you can add math into your STEM instruction, and also really easy and engaging. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Quick, short episode, but I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Elementary STEM Coach Podcast. I would love to connect with you over on Instagram at Naomi Meredith _ or send me an email to elementarystemcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Also, make sure to check out my website, naomimeredith.com, to see all the show notes from today's episode and shop my K through 5 STEM resources. Any questions you have, needs for resources, or ideas for episodes, get in touch. I'll talk to you soon.